So Tristan, Australia just passed a ban on social media. It's supposed to take effect in a year, and it would affect, all of it. It would affect Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram, and it's for under 16-year-olds. Controversial because some people say, free will, whatever. You should monitor your kid, be a better parent. And others say this has just spun so far out of control that we're past that point. Would you like to see the same thing done in the United States? And what do you make of their ban?
Yeah, it's a great question, Megan. I think it's great that the Australian government is taking this step and taking a strong stand on protecting kids online and responding to parents that are fed up with this. I'm a big friend and fan of Jonathan Haidt and his new book, The Anxious Generation, which really outlined over the last decade and a half how we got here and how with this business model of maximizing attention and engagement, it produced a generation of more addicted, distracted, sexualized, harassed children that have more anxiety, more depression rates than ever before. And while we all, parents do have a responsibility to, be aware of what their children are doing online. One of the things we talk about in our work, though, is that the number of things to be aware of is going up sort of like exponentially. And,
right.
The number of new apps are going up exponentially, and parents can't be aware of all of it at the same time. In the case of Sewell Setzer, the young 14-year-old who took his life, his mother knew to be looking out for what he was using in terms of social media, but did not know about these new AI chatbots. And there's so many of them that are constantly coming on the market. And so ironically, I think the social media ban in Australia would not cover so far the character.ai companion AIs. And I think that speaks to the issue of technology moving faster than governance. We have to live in a world where our culture and our appraisal of technology issues is moving as fast as the technology is. But I will say that that channel of, a child and their brain, their psychological environment, AI is going to produce a flood of new threats into that environment, from notification apps that are already starting to hit schools of kids making non-consensual imagery of other classmates, to new forms of harassment, to these new chatbots. And so I think while this channel is basically about to get flooded, saying we need to kind of put strict limits on that channel before we figure out what's really safe feels like a wise decision, given that the incentives are not aligned with, strengthening children's development as we roll out technology. Not yet.
I have to ask you about this latest school shooting that we just had here, because in Madison, Wisconsin yesterday, a 15-year-old girl, I've never heard of it. I've heard of like trans girls or whatever, but 15-year-old, I don't know that she had any gender issues, none reportedly, but 15-year-old girl identified as the shooter in this Wisconsin school where she wasn't going by her real name, but she was going by another girl's name. I know people are always wondering because a lot of times those kids are on drugs and so on and so forth. Then she took her own life. We are told that, by the way, a second grader called 911 to report the shooting, which is just so awful. And what we're told is that this was a school that was kind of a refuge for children who had been bullied or struggled at other schools. And that this girl in particular she was new to this private school this year. She was among those who came in need of a life change. We don't know anything about her social media use, Tristan. I'm not asking you to speculate about her particular case, but obviously this is a very troubled 15-year-old. And I just think the change now, like young girls as school shooters, in my own speculation, I don't think it's unrelated.
No. And in Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, specifically the issues of, self-harm and suicide and depression and all of this stuff, harassment, have been particularly harder on young girls compared to young boys. So it's not surprising to me at all, unfortunately. And we can't know with this case. It's too early to tell, given that we don't know their usage. But we do know that, again, we've run this experiment on children for the last 15 years. We've also handed, our number one geopolitical competitor, China, and the Chinese Communist Party, basically control over our youth psychological environment in the form of TikTok being the dominant thing that young people are looking at every day. And if I'm the Chinese Communist Party and I have an ability to go in and sort of steer TikTok and tilt the playing field of what gets recommended, I not only have the ability to steer what people are seeing, I have a 24/7 up to the minute update view of all of the cultural fault lines and divisive issues per political tribe in that country. And I can do precision targeting of how I want your country's internal divisions to go, because you've literally handed them to me on a silver platter. And this, I think, is one of the biggest and most obvious and avoidable mistakes that we could have made. And obviously, TikTok, there has been legislation move forward, and that ban looks like it will going forward. I think TikTok is appealing. And it's not just about TikTok, though. It's just about this systemic environment. On the one hand, you have our apps that are racing to addict and doom scroll our kids and drive anxiety. That's one set of problems. And then we also have the problem of letting our geopolitical competitor control the psychological environment of not just our young people, but our country. And I think people should sort of see how obvious an issue this is and say we need to move forward and not let this continue. And I hope that happens in the next administration.
I mean, we're seeing the effects of this, right? We're from the kids who are celebrating the bin Laden letter. Like, you really have to hand it to Osama bin Laden. Boy, did he nail it in this piece justifying 9/11. Like, what? There was just a poll that dropped today showing 18 to 29-year-olds, 41% of them, more than not, think that the shooting by Luigi Mangione, of CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson, was, quote, acceptable. 40% said no, not acceptable. 41% said it is acceptable. There's something wrong with our young people. And
that's just horrible to hear. Murder is always wrong, and we should, not be using violence, vigilante violence, to solve social problems. But it's also not surprising. We have a psychological environment of social media that is designed for maximizing engagement, which is designed to find every radicalizing cultural issue and then give you an infinite evidence of why it's getting worse and more extreme and why you should take extreme action for everything that you click on. It's like, whatever your boogeyman is that activates your nervous system, I just show you infinite evidence of that boogeyman happening. And then it drives up this sort of psychological, funhouse mirror that we're all living in. And we've been living in that for 15 years. So if you just imagine society going through the washing machine, getting spun out for 15 years in that environment, it's not surprising that we have people more radicalized on more issues everywhere. And the point is, this doesn't have to be this way. Imagine if we went back to 2010 and we said, before we go down this decade and a half of maximizing for attention and engagement, imagine we never did that. Imagine somehow we put strict limits on maximizing engagement and said, instead, you got to show us something else you're maximizing for. Kids apps, you got to be showing transparently, just like Elon showing what the algorithm of Twitter does. We have to transparently show, what are you doing to make children's psychological environment better? But you can't maximize for engagement. And imagine we did something totally different. How different would our world feel if we had not been personalizing these boogeyman, psychological stimuli for the last 15 years? And I think it would feel very different.
For those of us who have been holding our breath for the past several months, we can finally exhale in the wake of this presidential election, right? Work can finally be done on the major issues that this country's facing, and one of the most significant is our national debt. Look, the fact is our nation's broke, and that debt is a house of cards that cannot be quickly dismantled by anyone. So the strategy remains the same when it comes to your investments. You might want to diversify your savings. Virtually all the experts say that's a good idea. This is why I want to tell you about Birch Gold. So many things are out of our control and out of our president's control that it really can be important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group can help you if you would like to convert all or part of an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold, which is like a hedging of the bets. And the best news is it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. You just text MK to 989898 and you get your free info kit. And plus right now you will receive a free 1-ounce Silver Eagle for every $5,000 purchased Silver Eagle coin. Protect your savings with Birch Gold. Text MK to 989898 and claim your eligibility for free silver today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.